Thanks, Alan, and I also want to thank Jim and Stan for organising tonight's meeting. I'd like to thank all of you for coming along. For me, this is not just a case of us talking to you, but it's a chance for us to hear from the community about your concerns. So thank you for coming along so that we can hear from you. I also want to acknowledge the work of Mark Taylor and Tony Morrison, and of course the work of the Herald as well in shining a light on this issue. Some of you may have expected that the EPA would come along here tonight to defend the LAS or to dispute or challenge the research that Mark and Tony have done. That's very much not the case. We're as interested in everyone else of exploring this issue further. Mark has identified that the key issue for the lead abatement strategy was to reduce exposure to lead. We all know it's there. We know that as a result of the smelter's operations, that lead is present in the environment in this area. What we need to do, what we want to do, is minimise exposure to humans, to people in this room, and your children, to that lead. So what we're interested in is exploring that issue further. It's great that this issue has been brought to the fore. And what I want to speak to you briefly about is some of the actions that we're undertaking that will hopefully move us towards a greater body of knowledge about this issue. In response to this issue being publicised in recent months is that the EPA have established a lead expert working group. Now what we want to do with that group is bring together experts in this field to look at whether or not the LAS has been successful, and also look at whether or not that success or otherwise has led to heightened exposure for the community. Now I'm chairing that committee on behalf of the EPA. I should say that while I'm chairing a committee of experts, I don't consider myself one on this. And so that's why, and in fact us as local EPA don't consider ourselves to be the experts on some of this, the science on this, and that's why we bring together experts in the field to assist us on that. While I'm chairing it, we also have John Coffey from our Contaminated Sites Unit who was on the committee, Craig Dalton, Dr. Craig Dalton from the Public Health Unit here in the Hunter, Dean Chapman, who's the Environmental Security Coordinator of Macquarie Council, Mark Taylor, who's presented earlier tonight, Associate Professor Stephen Cattle, who's from the University of Sydney, a soil scientist, a Contaminated Site Auditor, Graham Nyland, and in addition a number of other people who can come along and present and provide us advice on an as-needs basis. That group has met twice in the last couple of months and will continue to meet on a regular basis, essentially probably on a monthly basis over the next little while, as we start to carry out a couple of projects that will assist us to get information on this issue. The first of those is to undertake a literature review of best practice for remediating sites like this from around the world. It has been suggested that this strategy, regardless of its level of success, didn't represent best practice, and we want to explore that further. Mark's identified a number of sites around the world earlier that have had similar problems, and so we're going to ask, we're going to put out to tender for some specialists to explore that further, identify what best practice is in these sorts of situations, and determine if the strategy in place here diverts from that, and if so, what measures we might put in place to address that. The other key piece of work that the group is overseeing is to look at solutions for waste disposal of lead in this community. Now, in the past, you've had an opportunity to return lead-affected soil to the smelter, to the cell there. That opportunity is going to close in the next couple of weeks. The cell will be closed as the remediation draws to a conclusion. We appreciate that alternatives to that can be costly, can be time-consuming in terms of getting soil analysed, etc. And so what we're working on is a solution to try and make that as practical and cost-effective as possible for people who do have material they want to dispose of, whether that's voluntarily or as part of a development process where council might require you to do some work on your property. We want to make that as easy as possible. To that end, we've been analysing some representative soil samples to look at their suitability for placement in different waste facilities, looking at our options for reducing costs to people who want to dispose of waste, and talking to some waste facilities about their willingness to set up dedicated areas to receive that sort of material. Now, one of the concerns that was expressed about the working group when we first set it up was that there's no community representation on that group, and that wasn't by accident. It was something that we considered carefully. We wanted it to be a group where experts could get together and compare complex technical data, but we acknowledge that we need an avenue, and beyond meetings like tonight, for the community to get involved in this process moving forward. The other thing, of course, is generally when you have a process like that, you appoint a community rep. Now, there must be 100 or more people here tonight, and it's tough for one person to represent the views of all of you. We've heard a few different views already tonight. So with that in mind, what we have done is establish a community reference group. We're in the process of establishing a community reference group. We've been lucky enough to have Greg Piper agree to chair that group, and we've called for nominations for members of the community who would like to participate in that process. We've asked for 4 representatives of the community in general. Specifically, we'd also like another person to represent the business interests of the local community, distinct from the residential community, and also someone to represent the school community in this area. I know there are a number of schools that fall within the area affected by the smelter. We've also asked a number of 2 councillors from Macquarie to participate, and we're also asking Ferrier Hodgsons as the administrators for Pasmico to identify someone to participate in the process. We're hoping that that's going to give more of you an opportunity to have your say and be involved in the process moving forward. That community reference group will work side by side with our expert working group on seeing the results come in of studies, seeing the work of the literature review come back in, the work of our waste solution being identified, and have an opportunity to shape that process as we move forward. We've called for nominations. There's further information on our website about that process, and applications close on the 13th of March. So we're hoping then by around the end of March to be able to convene the first meeting of that group. We'll probably have a joint meeting with the expert working group to kick things off and build an ongoing liaison between those 2 groups. There was some talk earlier about getting government to take notice, and certainly I want to acknowledge Barry Buffier, my boss, CEO and Chair of the EPA, who's here with me tonight. Certainly for our agency, I hope you guys recognise that reflects the seriousness that this issue is being taken by us. We don't get Barry up to 100 very often, not as often as we perhaps like, but he's here tonight, which reflects the fact that this issue is being taken very seriously by us and will continue to be as we work towards a solution. I think on that basis, really they're the key initiatives that we're undertaking that I wanted to focus on. As I say, I don't want to get into specifics about was the LAS successful and what have you. They're all things that will be borne out by the work that those 2 groups do over the next period of time. I'm also been asked, and I will shortly speak about the blood lead work that Health are going to be doing, which of course is really a key piece of work to determine whether or not this lead that's identified in the environment is actually getting into the blood of children and affecting their health potentially. So I'll talk more about that when we get to the health section, but just open up the questions now, either directed to myself or to Barry on behalf of the EPA.
Thanks, Adam. Barry Buffier is here and he's quite happy to answer questions with new people because of his position. Secondly, I'd like to welcome Honourable Greg Piper, Laurie Coghlan and Rob Danton. You weren't here earlier on, but welcome to the meeting. I hope that you get involved, and thank you very much. Questions now, please.